Level 1, the raw recruit. You are 12 years old when they take you from your village in the Balkans. It is not a kidnapping, not exactly. The men who come wear red caps and carry imperial registers. Your father stands in the doorway. He does not stop them. He has been told this is an honor. You will not understand what kind of honor it is for another decade. The Devshirm is the system that made you. 1 in 40 boys, selected from Christian households across the empire. Taken, converted on paper, and fed into the largest military institution in the known world. You are given new clothes, a new name in the registers, and a destination, the capital. Istanbul. You have never seen a city. You have barely seen a road. The journey takes 3 weeks on foot. You walk with 40 other boys from 40 other villages. Nobody cries after the first 2 days. There is no energy for it. You learn the names of the boys around you because names are how you track who is still there when you wake up each morning. Istanbul hits you before you see it. The smell comes first, salt and smoke and 10,000 cooking fires. Then the noise. Then the walls, which are taller than anything you believed stone could be. You stand at the gate with 40 other boys and you understand for the first time that you are very small, and the thing you have been placed inside is very large. You are assigned to a palace household outside the city. A farm essentially, but run with military discipline. You learn Turkish. You learn to ride. You learn to use a bow. You learn to carry yourself in a way that does not embarrass the institution that now owns you. The men who oversee you are not cruel in the way you feared. They are indifferent in a way that is harder to adjust to. You are not a person to them yet. You are a candidate for becoming one. 3 years pass. You grow 4 inches and lose your accent. You stop dreaming in your first language. You do not know when that happened, but one morning you notice it is gone. Level 2, the Janissary candidate. At 15, you are transferred. The Janissary Corps, Janissary, the new soldiers, is the standing infantry of the Ottoman Empire, the most professional fighting force in a world that has not yet decided what professional means. You will spend the next several years finding out. The barracks in Istanbul are a city inside a city. 400 men in 12 units eat together, sleep in the same long rooms, and are forbidden from marrying, from commerce, from anything that creates a loyalty outside the corps. The theory is that a man with nothing to go home to fights harder. The theory is not wrong. You train with a yatagan before you are allowed to touch a musket. They say a man who cannot fight with his hands will make mistakes with a firearm. The senior soldiers are not teachers in any way you recognize from your childhood. They demonstrate once. They watch you attempt it. If you fail badly enough, they correct you. If you fail within an acceptable range, they wait for you to correct yourself. You carry water. You carry firewood. You cook for the unit. You clean the weapons of men who outrank you. This is not punishment. This is the structure. The Janissaries operate as a self-sustaining household, which means every man inside it has done every job inside it. You run every morning before the city wakes. The route takes you along the sea walls, and in winter the spray from the Bosphorus reaches the path and freezes on the stones. You fall twice and get back up twice. On the third fall, an older soldier pulls you up without looking at you and keeps running. You match his pace for the rest of the route. He never mentions it. At 18, you are considered a full recruit. You are given a position in an orta, a company. You are handed a musket, issued your white felt cap, and placed in a formation with 124 other men who have gone through exactly what you have gone through. You are not yet a soldier who has fought. But you are prepared to be one. Level 3, the common soldier. Your first campaign is in Hungary. The march north takes 7 weeks. The army moves like a slow river, 60,000 men, artillery, supply wagons, cavalry on the flanks. You have never seen a force this large. You will later understand that this is a medium-sized Ottoman campaign. The siege work is methodical. The Ottomans do not favor the cavalry charge into a fixed position. They build. Trenches extend toward the walls over days while artillery hammers the stone. Your unit works the trenches. You dig and you advance and you dig again. The earth is your protection and your occupation at the same time. The first man you see die is not in your unit. He is 50 feet to your right, a soldier you have spoken to twice, and a stone fragment from a defensive cannon round takes most of him apart before you register the sound. You keep digging. Not because you do not care. Because there is nothing else to do and the trench is not finished. The wall breaks on the 12th day. Your orta is third through the breach. The fighting inside is nothing like the training exercises. It is tight and loud and confused, And the only reason you survive the first 30 seconds is that the man in front of you absorbs a blow meant for you and you instinctively do the correct thing in response. You come out the other side of it and your hands are shaking and your unit sergeant is looking at you with an expression that means you passed something without knowing there was a test. You return to Istanbul with a campaign ribbon on your cap. Your order loses 11 men in Hungary. You remember each name. You have been told that remembering is a form of carrying, and that carrying is part of the job. You spend the next 4 years alternating between garrison duty in Istanbul and 2 more campaigns, one in Persia, one along the Danube. Each one teaches you something the previous one did not. The Persian front is heat and dust and long columns of movement with almost no pitched battle. You learn patience in a theater where the enemy is also the terrain. The Danube campaign is winter warfare, which is a different education entirely. Your feet tell the story of that campaign for the rest of your life. Level 4, the Corporal. You are promoted at 24. 10 men under your direct supervision. The promotion does not come with ceremony. Your unit commander tells you, hands you a written notice for the registers, and goes back to inspecting the armory. That is the entirety of it. The weight of 10 men is different from the weight of yourself. You understand this on the first patrol when one of your men makes a decision you did not authorize and it nearly costs 2 others their lives. You debrief him that evening. You do not raise your voice. You explain the sequence of events and where the decision broke from the established plan. He listens. He does not fully understand yet. He will, or he will not survive long enough to matter. You are stationed at a border fort in Anatolia for 18 months. The fighting here is not the siege work of Hungary or the column warfare of Persia. It is small and constant and personal. Raids and counter-raids. Night patrols along ridgelines. The enemy here is intimate in a way that changes how you think about the word. You know their patterns before you know their faces. You track them the way a hunter tracks, not the way an army advances. You lose one of your 10 men to an ambush in a mountain pass. He is 20 years old. He came from a village in Macedonia, like you, and the last thing he says is the name of a woman you assume is his mother. You write the report and send it to the registers. The registers record his name, his unit, and the date. You record other things in a different place, one that does not have pages. You come back from the border posting changed in ways your superiors recognize and your old friends notice. The old friends don't ask. The superiors see it as readiness. They are not wrong, but they are not entirely right either. Level 5, the Janissary Captain. Korbasai means soup ladle. The name comes from the cauldron, which is the unit's most sacred piece of equipment, not for any ritual purpose, but because the cauldron is where the unit eats, and in the Janissary Corps, eating together is the mechanism of cohesion. When a unit throws down its cauldron, it means mutiny. You have seen it happen once. You have spent the rest of your career making sure it never happens in any unit you command. You are 31 years old. You command a full order of 150 men. You know each of them by name, by capability, and by the specific way each one fails under pressure. This is not sentiment. This is operational intelligence. A commander who does not know where his formation will break cannot plan for it. The empire is large and its problems are diverse. Your order is dispatched to Egypt after a local governor decides that his authority supersedes Istanbul's. This is not the first time a governor has made this decision. It will not be the last. Your unit's job is to make the cost of the decision legible to whoever comes next. The campaign is short and conclusive. The governor's forces are numerically larger but organizationally weaker. You do not mistake numerical size for military capability. You make this point to a younger officer who outranks you on paper and who is about to make an error based on the count of the enemy's men. He listens. The battle ends the way the plan suggested it would. Afterward, you sit in a commandeered house in Cairo while your unit processes the aftermath of the operation. You eat cold food because the campaign fire was not maintained during the final push. You think about the sequence of decisions that led to this room, this meal, this moment. You cannot find the part where you made the wrong choice. You carry that forward. You return to Istanbul with a favorable report from the campaign commander. The palace registers your name in a new category. You are being watched for further advancement. You are not told this directly. You find out from a man who reads registers for a living and owes you something from 3 campaigns ago. Level 6, the district military commander. At 38, you are pulled from the field and given territory. A district in Rumelia, the Balkan provinces. You are responsible for internal order, tax administration within military parameters, the maintenance of roads used by military supply columns, and the response to any threat that enters your district before the main army can be organized. You are, in other words, the empire at the local level. Everything the empire is, you represent. The gap between what the empire intends and what arrives at the village level is your problem to close. Your residence is a converted stone building in a market town. You have a staff of 12 administrators and 40 soldiers. You hold weekly hearings where local disputes are brought to you: land boundaries, water rights, complaints about the tax collector's methods, accusations between neighbors. You are not a judge. A proper cadi handles legal matters. But you are the authority that either supports the cadi's rulings or creates the conditions in which they become meaningless. You choose to support them, consistently, because an administration that undermines its own institutions destroys the trust that makes collection and compliance possible. The Balkan districts are complex terrain. The population is mixed: Turks, Bulgarians, Greeks, Serbs, Vlachs, and communities in between whose exact composition is a matter of ongoing administrative interest. You do not manage them as categories. You manage them as people with specific grievances that must be heard and specific obligations that must be met. This is slower than the alternative. It is also more durable. In your third year, a severe winter destroys 2 harvests and half the livestock in the northern portion of your district. The tax quota does not change. Istanbul does not reduce the quota. You send 3 separate reports explaining the situation. 2 are acknowledged. 1 receives a response that tells you to find alternative collection methods. You spend 3 months navigating between the quota requirements of the central administration and the material reality of villages with nothing left to give. You adjust what can be adjusted. You absorb what cannot. Some of the shortfall is recorded as delayed, which is a fiction that both you and the administrators in Istanbul understand as such, and which serves the function of preserving the relationship between the center and the district until conditions improve. The conditions do improve. The following harvest is strong. The delayed amounts are quietly reduced in the registers without formal acknowledgement. You file an accurate accounting and move forward. Your soldiers break up 2 bandit organizations operating in the hill passes east of your territory. The second one costs you 4 men and the district's best tracker, who takes a crossbow bolt through the shoulder and never regains full use of that arm. You pay for his continued support from your household accounts because the formal mechanism for compensating injured soldiers below a certain rank is slow and insufficient. Several of your men notice this. The unit cohesion improves measurably. Level 7, the provincial governor. You are 44 when the appointment arrives. Governor of a mid-sized province. You have not sought this. You have been recommended by 2 senior commanders whose campaigns you supported and whose reports your name appears in favorably. In the Ottoman system, visibility in the right places is how advancement works. The province is a different order of complexity from the district. You manage 6 sub-governors. You coordinate with military units that report to Istanbul directly but operate within your territory. You negotiate with trade guilds whose cooperation is central to the revenue base. You maintain the road network, the water systems, and the post relay stations that connect you to the capital and the capital to you. You hold formal hearings 3 times a week. The matters that reach a governor have already passed through multiple layers of administration, which means they are either genuinely unresolvable at lower levels or they involve people with enough standing to demand your direct attention. You learn to distinguish between the 2 categories quickly. The first requires judgment. The second requires managing relationships while still arriving at a defensible outcome. A plague comes through the western portions of your province in your second year. It moves through the port towns first, then inland along the trade routes. You implement quarantine measures that are unpopular with the merchant communities, whose caravans are the province's primary revenue source. You hold to the measures. The mortality rate in your province is lower than in the adjacent territories, which do not implement equivalent controls. The merchant communities remain unhappy until the plague passes, at which point they say nothing about it and resume their previous positions. You send your eldest son to Istanbul for his education at 18. He is a capable young man who resembles his mother in the ways that matter. You see him twice in the next 4 years. The position requires your presence. He understands this. Your wife tells you he understands it less completely than he presents. A military campaign passes through your province heading east. You are responsible for supplying it: grain, fodder, wagons, labor. The logistical requirements of an army in transit are enormous and the timeline is always shorter than the preparation requires. You manage it. You exceed the required quota by 12%, which costs your province a difficult spring but produces a favorable notation in the campaign commander's report. That notation has a value you cannot measure precisely, but you know it is there. You administer for 9 years. The province is more stable when you leave it than when you arrived. The roads are better. The registers are accurate. The judicial system functions without your constant intervention. These are the correct metrics, though nobody states them as such. They simply exist in the difference between the records when you arrived and the records when you depart. Level 8, the military commander of rank. The rank of Pasha is not a single thing. There are Pashas with 1 tug, the ceremonial horsetail standard that marks military rank, and there are Pashas with 3. You receive your first tug at 52. You are now one of the Empire's senior military commanders. Your decisions will move armies. You are appointed to command a significant campaign force operating against the Safavid Persians in the east. The strategic situation has been contested for decades. The frontier shifts in both directions based on campaign seasons and political stability in Isfahan and Istanbul. Your mission is to push it eastward and hold it. You command 45,000 men, a force that requires its own administrative structure to function. You have a chief of artillery, a chief of cavalry, a chief of supply, and a corps of administrative officers who manage the registers, the correspondence, and the intelligence summaries. The intelligence is often incomplete. The maps are partially wrong. The terrain is consistently hostile. You spend the first month of the campaign doing nothing that looks like fighting. You are establishing supply depots, repairing road sections, and placing observation posts. Young officers read this as hesitation. You allow them their interpretation. The campaign begins in earnest when the logistics support it, not before. An army that outruns its supply wins battles and loses campaigns. You have seen this conclusion demonstrated at sufficient cost that you require no further evidence. The main engagement takes place on a plain east of a river whose name is already in the dispatches going back to Istanbul. The battle lasts 6 hours. Your flanking movement, which you have rehearsed with the cavalry commanders 3 times in the preceding 2 weeks, works exactly as planned until it does not, at which point it works adequately, which is sufficient. The Persian force withdraws. The position is taken. You lose 3,400 men in the campaign's 3 principal engagements. You know each unit's losses. You do not know each name at this scale, which is one of the costs of command at this level. The commanders who served under you know the names. You carry the aggregate. Both things are true at the same time. You hold the new position through winter with a garrison force and return to Istanbul in spring with your campaign report. The Grand Vizier receives you. The meeting is formal and brief. The report speaks for itself. You are awarded additional marks of honor and your household receives increased stipend provisions. You take 2 months in your Istanbul residence. Your wife reads the city's mood for you, which she has always been better at than you. She tells you which relationships need maintenance and which are currently sound. She is rarely wrong. You act on her assessments without explaining the source of your information, which she finds amusing. Your body has started telling its own separate story. The old injury from the Danube campaign produces weather-dependent pain in your left knee. A persistent cough from the Persian highlands lingers through the winter. You continue because the work continues. Level 9, the Grand Vizier. You are 60 years old. The appointment arrives by imperial rescript, a document that rearranges the terms of your existence completely. Grand Vizier. Sadrazam. The Sultan's absolute deputy. The Empire's primary executive officer. Every matter of military, administrative, financial, and diplomatic significance passes through you before it reaches the throne or after it descends from it. You hold the imperial seal. This is not a metaphor. It is a physical object in your household, and its presence there represents the operational authority of a state that spans 3 continents. You carry this with an awareness that is constant and contains no room for abstraction. Your days begin before dawn. The first briefings arrive with the light, reports from provincial governors, intelligence summaries from agents across the empire's borders, financial reports from the treasury, petitions from every category of subject and institution that believes its concern warrants your attention. You cannot read all of it. You have learned to identify which summaries carry the decisions that must be yours and which can be delegated without consequence. You hold the imperial divan 4 times a week. The divan is the Council of State. The chief military officers, the chief financial officers, the chief judicial officers, and the chief administrative officers sit with you and present their matters. You listen more than you speak. You have found that speaking too early in a meeting produces agreement where you want honest assessment. The men around you are capable. They are also attentive to your preferences in ways that can make those preferences self-confirming unless you engineer conditions that prevent it. The empire is under simultaneous pressure from multiple directions. The Habsburgs in the West have reorganized their defensive structure and a campaign projected to conclude in 1 season has extended into a third. The Safavid situation in the East is never fully resolved, only temporarily arranged. Egypt in the South, Requires attention that correspondence cannot deliver. You manage all three at once, allocating resources, adjusting timelines, replacing commanders who have stopped producing results, and absorbing the diplomatic consequences of operations that affected parties who expected to be consulted first. You write letters to foreign courts in careful language that says exactly what is intended and nothing beyond it. You receive letters that attempt the same. The gap between what a letter says and what the sender means is the operational terrain of diplomacy, and you have been navigating terrain your entire career. An assassination attempt occurs on your route between the palace and your residence. It is poorly organized and fails before your guards are fully engaged. The individuals involved are identified through interrogation and their networks are traced and removed. You write a report to the Sultan that is accurate in its facts and measured in its recommendations. You do not recommend severity beyond what the security situation requires. The recommendation is accepted. You serve as Grand Vizier for 7 years. 3 major campaigns are authorized under your tenure. 1 succeeds fully, 1 achieves its primary objectives, and 1 ends in a negotiated settlement that is neither victory nor defeat and which you present to the Sultan as a managed outcome, which it is. The assessment in the historical records will be written by people who were not in the room and did not have access to the intelligence. You will not be there to correct them. You are replaced without warning, as all Grand Viziers eventually are. The imperial rescript arrives on a Tuesday. You hand over the seal that afternoon. You are given a provincial appointment of honor, a comfortable posting that represents neither disgrace nor continued relevance. You accept it because the alternative is less comfortable. Level 10, the man after the empire. Your provincial posting is a coastal town in the Aegean. The residence they have given you is a walled house with a garden that faces the water. You sit in that garden most mornings now. The sea is the same color it was when you crossed the Bosphorus for the first time as a 12-year-old boy from a Balkan village who had never seen a city. You are 68 years old. Your left knee no longer functions correctly in cold weather and you have accepted that it will not improve. Your cough resolved itself in the warm climate here. The hands that signed campaign orders and imperial dispatches for 4 decades are steady when you hold your morning tea, and this seems to you a form of fortune you did not expect. Your wife is here. She has arranged the house in a way that makes it feel inhabited rather than assigned, which required effort because it arrived as the latter. She grows things in the garden. She has opinions about every administrative decision made by the local governor and shares them with you over the evening meal. You find this continues to be one of the more reliable pleasures of your day. Letters arrive from former officers. Some ask for recommendations. Some ask for guidance on situations they face in their current postings. You answer them all, briefly and practically. You have found that brevity is more useful than thoroughness when men are asking questions they already know the answers to and simply need confirmation. A short response that confirms a sound instinct serves better than a long response that adds uncertainty. Former colleagues die at a rate that increases each year. Campaigns, illness, age, the simple arithmetic of a profession that places men in the path of violence for decades. You receive the notifications and sit with them. Some of these men were present on the day you were promoted out of a rank you had occupied for years. Some of them were in specific positions at specific moments when different decisions would have produced different outcomes. You do not dwell on the alternatives. The alternatives did not happen. Your grandson visits in the spring. He is 9 years old and interested in everything at once. He wants to know about the battles. You tell him about logistics. He is briefly disappointed and then asks increasingly specific questions about how supply columns are organized, which suggests he may have the correct instincts despite the initial reaction. You spend 3 afternoons with him over the course of the visit. You find that teaching a 9-year-old requires a precision of explanation that you have not used in 20 years, since the last time you were responsible for men who genuinely did not yet know what you were telling them. Your son serves as a mid-level commander in the Balkan provinces. He has done this competently. You are aware that his name has not appeared in the registers in the way that produces advancement, and you know that this is partly because of choices he made and partly because of chance, the timing of which campaigns moved through which regions while he held which postings. You have not intervened on his behalf. You made that decision early and held to it, for reasons that were harder to articulate when he was young than they are now. There are things from your career that will not leave the category of memory, regardless of the distance time creates. The faces of men who died under your command at various levels, when you were a corporal managing 10 and later when you were a general managing tens of thousands. The calculation does not change because the scale changes. The weight of each decision that ended with a man's name removed from the active registers is the same weight regardless of whether the name was one of 10 or one of 40,000. You carry the aggregate. A young officer arrives at your residence in the autumn, sent by a commander you served with who thought you might be willing to speak with him. He is 26 years old and has just been given his first independent command. He sits across from you in the garden and asks what you would tell him to remember. You look at him for a moment. He looks like every young officer at the beginning of it. He looks like you in the registers, described by the men who commanded you. You tell him that the institution is larger than any individual within it and smaller than the territory it is responsible for maintaining. You tell him that the men under his command are not instruments of his intentions but people whose judgment he must build rather than replace. You tell him that the distance between the capital's orders and the local situation is always larger than the capital believes, and that managing that distance without losing the connection to either end is the actual work. You tell him that the records he keeps will matter more than he currently believes and less than the decisions he makes in the moments when there is no time to record anything. He listens carefully. He takes notes. He thanks you and departs. You return to your chair in the garden. The sun is going down behind the hills and the sea is changing color the way it does at that hour, a shift from blue to something that does not have a specific name but which you have watched enough times now to recognize as the end of another day in a place where the pace of time has finally slowed to something you can follow without effort. Somewhere in Istanbul tonight, a 12-year-old is standing at the gate of a palace household for the first time. He came from a village on a dirt road in the Balkans and he has never seen a city. The men in red caps brought him here. His parents stood in the doorway. He does not know what comes next. He cannot. The knowledge only arrives in sequence, one rank at a time, one campaign at a time, one decision at a time, over the course of a life that the institution will shape in ways he cannot anticipate and in ways that will ultimately belong entirely to him. He will serve. He will learn. He will rise or he will not. He will make decisions that other men carry and other men will make decisions he carries. If he lives long enough, he will sit somewhere with a view of water and understand that the things he survived and the things he lost and the things he built that outlasted him are all part of the same structure, which was always larger than the men inside it, and which required those men entirely. The garden is quiet. The sea is still. You drink your tea while it is hot.